Welcome to World Art Foundations. My name is Claire Hendel, and today we are holding our F2F question time with Belinda Holden from the Yinka Shonibar Foundation. Belinda's asked us for a roundtable discussion for supporting artists and curators through residencies and project spaces. We've received a great response from art foundations around the world, and we very much see this as the beginning of a conversation. Our network stretches from LA around to Tokyo and everything in between. And so sadly, not everyone can join the call today. So it'll be recorded and I'll save it to the Members Hub so that everyone can benefit from the discussions. As time is so tight, we may also create case studies from this call and again, save them to the Hub so that knowledge transfer can be easily achieved. Please do say if you'd like to add anything, or we really want to make sure that all of our activities are as constructive as possible for everyone. Make sure you do check out our event schedule. There's lots of exciting calls planned over the next few weeks, including digital programming, which, what does a hybrid event look like, all the way through to contemporary signing for the deaf community. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Belinda Holden for an introduction. Okay, thanks. no pressure.
I talking to Claire about sort of what are sort of questions we could, what subject matters could we talk about? Obviously, I came from a really sort of selfish viewpoint and that, well, really, we're just about to launch and are planning for physical residencies. And obviously we'd run a project space, Yinka's run a project space for many years, but we're in the process of changing the model and developing it. And obviously with the pandemic, that sort of put us back another sort of year or so. And we flipped to digital residencies in the meantime. And it was just, it's something that we're talking about so much with different sort of potential partners and in the planning stages. And I just really am looking at different models and trying to explore, okay, well, what's going to work for us at this time? And what are the lessons learned that other people have, what's been the experience that's out there? And I suppose this was a way of doing it sort of in a condensed fashion rather than lots of phone calls from me to different people. And I thought it was a great way for us to sort of share experiences. That's really the point.
Belinda, what did a digital residency consist of?
Well, I've got a little presentation I can show you. Shall I do that now, Claire?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, all right. So this is the space in Hackney. So this is the project space that Yinka has. And Yinka Shonibar is a British Nigerian artist, mostly known for his sculptural work and use of Dutch batik fabrics and his play with classical sculptures. And now he's working in batiks. I forgot to put in a slide about Yinka, but you probably know who he is.
We do.
Good, great, thank you. So he's been running this space in Hackney for sort of 12 years. And currently this beautiful space is filled with our production team who are busily painting and sculpting and producing Yinka's work. So we don't have access to it this year. And it has been an amazing place for a lot of multidisciplinary residencies. And the residencies are programmed from April to October, and they involve theatre, music, visual arts, dance. Basically, different groups will propose a residency. And that gets, those proposals then go through to a selection committee, and they are each given the space for a month to use as they wish. And it really is a lab space. It is a space in which there are no expectations for any outcomes whatsoever, except those outcomes that the artists or curators or filmmakers or theatre producers, whatever they want to do. The only condition or the only expectation is that at some point there is an opening up of the space or the process to engage with the local community. So that has been performances, that has been small exhibitions of process of welcoming into the studio, it's been talks, it's been feasts, food-based activities, it's been quizzes, it's been stand-up comedy nights, it's been, you know, you name it, I think it's happened in that space. And then, so last year we had to very quickly switch, and there are a series of organisations, curators and artists who'd already been given the space, and we asked them to rethink what they were doing and how could they present that, or how could they still create new work or develop ideas, but hosted within in a digital way. So we basically gave them between £6,000 and £7,000 each in order to support their month residency. Some of them had a couple of months planning prior to the actual sort of public engagement of the residency. They were given all of our social media, the website to take over. They also created their own websites to support it. So for example, the first one was Take Dada Seriously, and this is a craft collective of curators. And they actually commissioned four artists to produce new work, but then had a lot of collaborators and writing workshops, and they already lined up with some youth groups they were going to work on a practical level. But they were able to swap that out to a series of Zoom workshops, and they sent out crafting packs to those young people so that they could join with the artists. So those actually weren't public, but they were workshops that were taking place during that time. And they were posting every sort of other day. There was new posts going up on social media, and the website that they did evolved its content over that month. So there's more and more content, and resources were going up online, and their contributors were then adding poems, and there were all sorts of then shared things like, I don't know if you know Padlet, which is like a scrapbook, a digital scrapbook where you can post images and writing, and you can all sort of add things over a period of time. So much like
what was the name of the scrapbook?
Called Padlet, Padlet. Another thing they used was, well, one of the others used was Mural, which is more of a brainstorming tool. And then Sustainable Darkroom, they're a collective, a photography collective, and they used their month to run a whole series of workshops showing people how to set up their own dark rooms and different sort of development materials. So there were all these online sort of workshops, and then films, and there were 17 artists from all over the world taking part. That was rammed, but they actually charged people to join, and they charged for people to join the workshops. And they were using a YouTube channel to do that. And actually they were sold out on every workshop they did. So whereas everybody else we worked with over those four months, you know, were offering free, they actually had revenue. So that was good on them. Wow. And then this was a lovely residency where we had two curators worked with each week a different migrant community in the UK Filipino, Taiwanese, Yoruba, Berber, and commissioned 3 artists to showcase their work, and then ended it with this amazing cooking weekend. So they'd send out to participants the menu, the meal plan, the recipe, and then they'd do this live cooking, and but it was all these lovely stories they'd be talking about in between as well. And there was signing and captions, subtitling with all of that as well, which was made it really accessible. It was fantastic. Sorry. And then we had the last sort of main residency was ended in October, and that was with 3 artists, 2 based in Nigeria and 1 curator in the UK, and that was more of a kind of a performance-based work where they actually hosted these kind of like funerals for failure. They were almost like therapy sessions, which were then filmed and recorded, and then they've created this website, this kind of interactive website out of it. And yeah, was really interesting. And then we did a small little film festival in January this year with Rax Media and Mohamed Barusha, and we had these lovely Q&A sessions, which we had about between 15 to 45 people attend. So there was a live screening, everyone sort of logged in at that time, and then which was then followed by Q&A. And it actually worked quite well. So we were surprised. We kind of didn't know how that was going to go. And then the last thing we did was more of an exhibition, and this is 12 artists who are actually Yinkers fabricators, who all do different things, who all got these amazing skills. And again, they took over the website, took over the social media, and just sort of allowed and there was everything from music, soundtracks, films, making. It was so diverse, and it was constantly changing and evolving. So it was full on. But that was kind of like it was almost like a studio visit to each artist every couple of days, you know, to sort of see their practice and what they were doing and how they were constructing, and then you got to see some outcome work as well, and that was lovely, and it was so diverse. And so what we're doing next, we just heard we've got British Council funding to host a digital programme again this summer, and that will be working with African diaspora artists in the UK and artists in West Africa, so Ghana, Nigeria, that sort of sub-Saharan West Africa area, so which is really exciting. So we're just sort of working with International Curators Forum and CCA Lagos in developing the shortlist. So we won't go open call. We decided we'll do a shortlist, an invited shortlist, and also pay the invited shortlisted artists to develop a proposal. So we've got 6 kind of slots, and we're inviting up to 16 artists to develop proposals for it, but making sure we pay them to develop those proposals. So, you know, we're also conscious about what is, you know, we are artist led from Yinka, and so when we're thinking about good practice, we're trying to sort of put in these things right from the beginning. If we're asking for artists to give their time to consider something, we'd like to make sure that we can recompense them in some way, just a small stipend. And we're planning for the physical spaces in Lagos and Ijuba on our farm. So we've got 6 bedroom studio spaces, And we're looking at hosting residencies from 1 month to 3 months for artists, curators, very interdisciplinary opportunities. So that's me.
So I have two questions, Belinda. First, when do we get to come? And second, how big a staff do you have working on this residency program? It sounds very ambitious and the one person. Mhm.
One person. So I did have two. Now I'm down to one, and I'm just about to put out a job description for an assistant to support me. So that's just about to happen. And I'm about to take on some freelance curators. So and then my next thing is building the team in Nigeria. So again, we'll be going out to I really want to appoint on the ground from West Africa, because it's important that we're building cultural infrastructure within Africa. So we hope we're interviewing sort of by midsummer. But of course, at the moment, what I'm doing is preparing the ground for that by developing and exploring possible partnership opportunities. I'm looking at what's our residency model, and to be honest, at the moment, I'm looking at kind of a mixture of maybe 30% would be open call, because you just never know who's coming through. But my trustees have been very reticent about that because they think we're going to be swamped, which I think is true. So, but so I don't, and then 30% would be working with organizations like universities and museums and galleries and other foundations to kind of host sort of joint residencies. So for example, and then another third is working with organizations like private galleries, or who want a particular artist to come out and have some time in Africa, because that relates to a developing exhibition or something like that. And the same with we will host 2 curators from Germany as part of an exchange with the German Federal Cultural Foundation. That's it. I think that's it. And then with artist curators from Africa spending time at ZKU in Berlin. So that's kind of a really nice reciprocal opportunity. And then I've got to find funding to support all that. So that's the other half of my job.
Not an easy task at all, but an exciting project at the same time. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Belinda. That was a great sort of introduction to Yinka. And I just realized that perhaps we could just do a very quick 2-minute hello to everyone who's on the call, so everyone knows who's who. And here we got Christine if you want to just say hi and do it.
Hi. Yes, absolutely. I am in north of Rome. We have a contemporary art foundation, which is an open air space north of Rome, about 45 minutes from Rome. And it was founded 12 years ago. But besides some annual performances, we've been developing just recently some more projects, and we've been doing art therapy sessions with schools locally, and just trying to now branch out a little more and also sort of find possibilities for collaborations abroad, which is what brought us to the World Art Foundations.
Thank you. Yeah, and you pronounce the foundation so much better than me. Sorry, my Italian accent is.
No, the Fondazione Serpone, the Serpone Foundation.
Another place that I cannot wait to visit.
Exactly. So we're officially opening May 8th. Our first event, our first guided tours will be starting May 8th. So if y'all are in Italy this summer,
we'll be sure to head over. And then we have Yates. Yates has joined us from DRAF.
Yeah, so I'm here from DRAF. Actually, previously I was at Rupert, which is another residency. It's a publicly funded residency in Lithuania. So now I'm in a obviously DRAF is a private foundation. And we are about to launch a residency in Scotland. So probably considerably not less warm than in Italy, but in an incredibly beautiful castle, actually. So it'll be a very interesting and unique setting. And like you, Belinda, we're also exploring different models, brainstorming till the cows come home, but also focusing on the incredible asset that we have, which is the private collection of David and Indra Roberts. So that is going to be the generating kind of role of it. But that's where I come from.
Yeah, thank you. And then Laurence Otto from Museum Don Danans in Belgium, just to say hi.
Yeah, hi there. I'm happy the name of the museum is written here, so it's Museum Don Danans. It is was founded as a foundation in the 60s by a Belgian couple. It is a museum, but also 2 different sites, one of which is Brutalist house designed in the 70s, which we're now organizing 2 residency programs. One focused on art and architecture, exactly on the junction of the house, if you want, and the other one in collaboration with FABA, the Fundación Almine Bernardo Ruiz Picasso, so from the heirs of Picasso. And the new nominees will be announced on Monday. So we're really in the process of starting these 2 programs. So I'm very eager to learn from you today, and also from those who have been running residencies for a longer time, what you have learned in these past almost 2 years, we can say, and how you're shifting now your model. So yeah, I'm very eager to learn more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Laurence. And then Ingrid in Texas.
In Texas, yeah. So I am here at the Chinati Foundation, where I started just over a year ago, and as curator, and one of my charges is the Artist in Residency program that began here in 1989. Chinati is the museum that Donald Judd built out in the high desert plains of far west Texas as a place to permanently site works of art by himself and others. And also from the beginning, imagined this as a space for exhibitions and publications, and very importantly, artists in residence. Because one of the questions was, is this core to your mission? And it's absolutely baked into the DNA of Chinati. And the program began informally with Judd inviting his friend, the painter John Wesley, to come and spend the summer. So I like this idea that it began with artists wanting to hang out with artists out here in the out here in the frontier. And over the years, it's evolved into a program. We've had over 200 artists in residence. They're generally here for 2 months. They have an apartment on the museum grounds, and then a studio in town. And it's very basic and old fashioned. We give a small stipend to the artist who, at this point, it's open applications. People pay a modest fee. And since I've inherited the program, I would like to move to more of a curatorial approach to selecting the participants. But we shall see. So, because I've inherited this sort of institution, we'll see how much I can change. But one thing about, Belinda, you were saying that the sort of importance of not having expected outcomes from artists. So artists are here, they're given time, and many elect to have an open studio. But I am also talking to artists about doing some kind of public program, however informal, to introduce them to the community when they come here, because it can be kind of isolating to be here as well. So yes, it's a little snapshot of the artist in residency program at Chinati.
Thank you.
Very quick question, sorry. Is the Donald Judd Library also part of the foundation, and is it also part of the residency program? Is there access to the?
So when you come to Marfa, there is the Chinati Foundation, which Judd established in his lifetime. It opened into the public in 1987. And then there's also the Judd Foundation, which is the sort of more private foundation dedicated to Judd's living and working spaces here, including the library in Marfa. And we have good relations. So when artists are here, they're able to have access to the Judd Foundation buildings in best of times. I mean, things have been pretty closed here during the pandemic. But also when artists are here, they're living on the museum grounds and they have access to the collection. And yeah, it's a special immersive time, but it also, it is a residency for artists who, it is very isolated here. So if you want time and time to yourself with your work, this is a good place to be.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Mhm.
And then Julie and Cassis from the Carmagnac. I always pronounce everything incorrectly. Forgive me.
Margot, and it's indeed in south of France on the Mediterranean side, really on the edge of the Mediterranean. It was established by an American artist, Jerome Hill, who was initially from the Twin Cities and inherited his wealth from his grandfather and his father. And he came to south of France in the 30s, really like to be here, to have a space where he could create. He was not only a painter, but a film director and also a composer, very involved with people like Jonas Mekas, who came here a lot, like Living Theater was here to do some performances. So it's really a space that he developed for himself, to be here with other artists and have, because it was in France, so possibility to stay for longer. So we have 13 apartments, all equipped with individual bathroom and kitchen. Also, you wanted to be able to present the work or work in progress. So there is an open air theater of 400 seats that is really like a Greek style amphitheater above the sea. And we are actually now in the not far from Marseille, so it's a second French city, but also in the middle of a national park. The foundation was established 50 years ago, and was very much focusing on supporting American scholars to know more about French culture and the arts. Slowly but surely, some artists were involved, and but it was only one program up until actually 8 years ago, when I was hired to really say the needs of artists, scholars, and thinkers have really evolved. It doesn't make sense. This area is really dynamic, not only because of the art sector, but also the academia, also Mediterranean. I mean, we are really facing the sea, and this area is really important. So the decision was to say we need to not only have a place for, let's say, focusing on Anglo-Saxons artists and scholars, but make it much more open, make it much more also in interaction with other organizations in the area. So we, over the last 7 years, have been really organically redeveloping the programs in different ways, being by an open call. And Belinda, I agree with you that it's, I mean, we receive like 8 to 1,000 applications a year for our open call, but we can get new people from areas that we don't know. So that's a huge amount of work. But we have also some other more specific calls in partnership. We have also some by invitation, and each place now we have really like different type of programs, being really time and space with little or no expectation, that are 2-3 months residencies and more group sessions. So there is an exchange between disciplines. We have also, because we're a place for artists and scholars, some specific programs for artists and scholars that want to work together. We have some like more group thematic on specific subject being related to where we are. And we have some long-term production residencies also that we are more and more developing, which then is much more curated and it's like by invitation, people we can follow, and is for us also is, and for me as a head, as a director, it's much more, it's also very fulfilling to be able to go discussing and over a few years.
Yeah.
That all evolved organically based also on the history of the site and on the history of Jerome Hill and the spirit of him, but also this specific site, where are we? And I think that's really important. I think each residency center needs to be, there is no cut and paste option. I mean, it needs to be where, based on its own place, on its own history, on its own questions. And then that's what makes it beautiful and interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Couldn't agree more. And then Marion is here from Germany, just from KI10 Athena Foundation. I don't know if you just want to say hi.
Yes, if you can hear me, I'll keep it short because the connection is really bad. Yes, I'm from KI10. I'm a writer here. We have a Athena Foundation, who is like the founder of an exhibition space in Düsseldorf, Germany, where I work. And we do a residency program, but there are some ideas, and I would just like to be here as a listener who shares of your experiences, if that's okay for all of you. That would be very nice, and has been very interesting already. So thank you, Belinda, for all this insight already. Thanks.
Thanks, Marion. So just in case you didn't catch that, they have a contemporary exhibition space in Düsseldorf, and they're looking in the future for residencies, but nothing's set yet. There are about 6 other organizations that definitely wanted to contribute to this call. So I will rally around and get written responses and share with everybody so that we can continue the conversation. I don't know, following Belinda's 5 questions, would anybody like to specifically answer any of those 5, ranging from funding through to, you know, what has worked and what hasn't worked? Should I pick on someone? Well, I suppose with Yates and your broad experience at Rupert as well.
Yeah, I was going to just Julie, that's extraordinary how many applications you get. At Rupert, we used to get several hundred, which was a really interesting and exhausting process of going through several applications. I think what made it, what we had to hold in the forefront of our mind was how to get a more diverse spread of applicants, because we got several from the kind of major metropolitan cities in Europe and America. So that made it interesting in terms of how do we engage people outside of particularly those metropolitan centers. But because it takes up so many resources, and also I know, having worked in a small team, that it's interesting but tiring. At DRAF, we decided just to do by invitation, and also to develop a model of residencies that where the model itself was responsive to the resident in question. So we would have a by invitation residency, probably for an artist in the collection, and then from that develop a kind of tailor-made set of programs, both for the artist and then for the public. So depending on the artist in question, see what their strengths, interests, and current projects are, and then out of that potentially develop, say, a summer intensive of workshops, which could then be a mixture of by invitation and an open call, or a kind of where we have I don't know, we nominate certain people to come. We decided that that was a good way to start, and then potentially from then on think about other avenues or opportunities to do a kind of an open call model. Yeah, I think, but I also, because knowing that the you know, guest projects, I mean, you must have such an incredible roster of artists, curators, and people who've worked and done things at, yeah, you could probably draw on, I guess. And you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an opportunity to offer or invite some of those that we've worked with before in London. But I think what's really exciting and what the opportunity is in Nigeria is, you know, where Yinka's vision is really there to build local cultural infrastructure. And that because there just isn't the kind of the strength of education, arts education, cultural education that we have in Europe and most of America, North America. You know, there just isn't that breadth. So it's the whole sort of idea of sort of cultural engagement and discussion and learning from each other is absolutely crucial. So it's really important that we have, so at each of our, so at our 2 locations, we've got three bedroom suites each. So there can only be 3 at any one time there. But it's important that at least one of those is from the African continent, and that, if not 2 from the African continent, and then one other from outside of the continent. And really sort of, I suppose, in terms of the curatorial role of the team is making sure we've got the right mix of practitioners and researchers, you know, that we've got the right mix there at any one time. So hence really wanting to put in our sort of planning for that as early as possible, that those artists, curators, researchers are with the appropriate people for their practice, that actually there will be that cross stimulation and an opportunity for collaboration and discourse. And then, like you were saying about program, it's then shaping any kind of public program around their practice, rather than trying to shoehorn them into something that we might have preconceived. So, which of course is really difficult on a small team at this point. So hence I'm pedaling as fast as I can to get a bigger team.
I think just very quickly that because that's what we did at Rupert all the time, and that was the most enjoyable thing, is seeing who would potentially work well together. And bar a couple of times, we always had amazing conversations that emerged out of 3. We also had 3 residency studios, and then often long-term collaborations that emerged thereafter. And one of the things that we're recognizing and want to build in at DRAF is to keep up this commitment of working closely with artists over a long period of time, rather than doing this sort of shoving people through the system. So that if a residence does something in 2021, maybe in 2024, we then return to a project that they started to develop. So it becomes this kind of, we build in these feedback loops. And that was certainly also what made it so pleasant about working in a residency, is that you can kind of keep returning to and sort of be committed to the artists that you're working with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it takes, and we do an open call because historically it was the way it worked. And I agree, it's a killer to receive like 800. I think it's, and there is the side of the people that are receiving, like staff and workload, but for me it's more an issue like regards to, at the end you select 18, so you have like 700, so many that are disappointed, which is more of an issue. So there are a lot of questions of why do or why not do that, and how much to be open, how much not to be open, all those questions that are. But I think with 3, you just doesn't make sense to do those huge open calls where you will be swamped with application. You cannot deal with them, and you better just go by invitation and try to do 3 that work well. And I totally agree with you. I mean, it's above all because your aim is to really like work on the local cultural sector and develop and bring new ideas there, and so it's not someone coming for a month that will get really involved. It's someone coming regularly that will make a difference, developing human relations and getting involved. And that's then and for you it will be super great, like interesting also, because you get involved with something that a project that will develop and totally grow.
That's it. I mean, I'm also hoping that we'll eventually get our project space back in Hackney, so that then we can do some reciprocal. You know, that actually we can have it in yet another country. So we just haven't got any.
Someone else. There are plenty of residency center in places in other countries or in London. I mean,
yeah. How does it go? What's your experience of doing sort of limited calls or very specific calls? Did that help with sort of reducing down the sort of level of applications coming in, doing a very specific call out? I'm just thinking, because we did a call out recently, obviously with the German Cultural Foundation, for German curators or artists with a curatorial practice who then wanted to come and work, be for 2 months, either in Lagos, South Africa, or Mozambique. So that there were 3 centres. And interestingly enough, though, you know, it was up for about 6 weeks, and there were only 20 applicants for Lagos. Luckily, the quality is pretty good, so that's great. I've got no complaints. But it was interesting, sort of going with quite a specific emphasis, and the emphasis being that for the curators who apply, that it is linked to a long-term project. So it's got to be linked to something that they're already interested in developing or planning, so that there is a physical outcome back in Germany. So,
and it was only for German-based ones.
It was only for German-based, yeah. Linked to the funding.
we do a few of that, and I like also. I mean, what I like is more that it's working with either a partner or funding organization and being able to go through that process and work on it, and be a few organizations working together, and then it makes sense. If it is not a one-off, like just we have some experience with the Goethe Institute actually, and where we are not yet totally satisfied by the collaboration, which is for a 1 month residency, and we think, yeah, it doesn't really work. But yes, we usually get those small groups like 20, 50, and that's far than it's good.
Yeah, likewise have experience of, but 2 different, probably a little bit like you, Julie. If we've partnered with we being the Rupert, because that's my most recent experience of a residency that actually exists. But that if we partnered with a foundation or funding body, whatever, sometimes we would get hardly any applicants. But if we had a specific theme or idea that we wanted people to address, then we would get less applicants than our open call, but really, really high quality, and would always be, you could tell that the person wanted to think carefully about the terms of the application, because we used to get people just saying, oh, we'll apply because we want to go to Latvia, and we say, well, Latvia isn't the wrong country, you know, where they're just sort of like like pouring out these applications but not really thinking carefully about it. And last year I ran a program which was really thinking about accessibility in broad terms, which actually came out of conversations with previous residents and with a friend of mine. So it had a kind of feedback loop with previous residents. But what was really good is that the applications that we had that specifically spoke to or responded to the broader public programs were very, very carefully written and involved projects that have had long-term, or I believe will have long-term kind of impact and influence in the region, and that they and those residents in turn will have learned something very important about thinking about disability and accessibility in the Lithuanian context. I mean, I know that's something that we also want to draw into the residencies at DRAF as well. So yeah, I think that's a good idea, that when you have these kind of limited open calls.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we're going. I mean, we're in the process, so we've got a sort of curatorial subcommittee, so made up of trustees and advisors, and what we're thinking about at the moment is actually it, in order to help us sort of plan, is that actually we possibly think about 2 or 3 strands or themes for thinking and debate, for which researchers, artists, or whoever can sort of either link into or think about as part of, and it's whether we leave those strands open over the whole sort of 12 months, and there are 3 strands that we will consider and that the public programming will rotate or have discourse around, or we kind of go, this 3 months is about sort of the environment, ecology, sustainability. This 3 month is all about curatorial practice, and what does that mean within today's context, and is the third sort of, you know, do we do it? Yeah, it's hard.
I think from a management or curatorial perspective, this makes sense. From an artist perspective and
yeah,
perspective, I'm not sure it makes. I mean, it's always tempting because then it's well organized and it's easy to invite guests and everything. But from an artist perspective, what I realize is that, I mean, just like working with people here, and that's why we now do on 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years residencies, is that it takes time, and that's the beauty of being able as a residency center to be able to offer some time for not being in this project dynamic, which kill us. I mean, not only the artist, actually kills us also, and drives us up from any creativity, any ideas. And what we have to protect and is really that, and gives a place for people to meet, to wander, to do mistakes, to come back. And yeah, that's, and those team of quarterly teams, it might be too
prescriptive
for an artist perspective, and that's, and I think also, and that's more linked to what we have been through the last year, and we are still in. We got the chance to keep the place open through, since like March last year, everything is open. We still have artists and people shelter in place, and we go on, and we have people coming, and we could bring actually people from Iran, from Egypt, from the US, even the last months. Not easily, but we could. I think one of the outcome of all that is time is required and slow down. I'm saying that I'm not succeeding in implementing it perfectly, but it's
Yeah, I would agree. I'm sorry, I realised I'm speaking quite a lot, but just very briefly on that is, I think it's about one of the key ideas for draft is to keep up this conviviality and intimacy that you can develop with an artist over a long, or a resident over a long period of time, and then not to, I mean, especially if it's a thematic, like the set of parameters, like you don't want to just end up paying lip service to them, especially if you as curators and the artist feel passionately about it and want to be able to, as you say, Julie, make mistakes or maintain that curiosity in those subjects of concern without it being crushed by admin and speed, which would just be a terrible shame. And I guess we're all in a privileged position of being in foundations where we, having worked in a public, where you do have to do things within certain deadlines, and maybe that's the kind of, this is the kind of privilege that we have that should be taken advantage of. That it could be something that a 2-year project around something that develops slowly.
And maybe you can have different subject at going the same. So
yeah, it's trying not to close anything down. That would just be the worst. It would just be the worst. I don't want to do that.
you have finally you have some freedom and some space.
Yes.
Most important thing.
Yeah, and Lagos, I don't know if anyone's been to Lagos in West Africa. It's an amazingly frenetic city, and it's will be quite which is why no one really should come for less than a month. I mean, 2 months is probably about right. 3 months would be amazing, just to sort of immerse yourself and be part and sort of
2 times 3 months.
But it's crazy. But
are there thematics for the other foundations how do you organize, or Christine, how are you, because you're about to open, aren't you? Said
yeah, so we in fact I've been working more, sorry, my son just came in with the dogs. So if there's some noise, I apologize. Dog, calmati. No, so we have a couple of commissions that are also ongoing right now, and so we have sort of informal residencies right now with artists that because the foundation was founded by my in-laws, who have been patrons of the arts, and their family have been patrons for the arts since the early 1800s, and so they have a lot of relations with and have supported a lot of artists over time, and so we have sort of informal residencies as of right now, and we tried to start up a residency foundation on this little island north of Sicily called Filicudi as well, but then with COVID we sort of put things on hold, and so this right now we're still in the development process, and we don't really have anything solid except for some of these new works that we've commissioned that we're working on with some other museums. But again, these are all things that, like you said, we're very privileged since we are private and we have the flexibility with time, just because with COVID and everything else, everything sort of slid more in the future. But,
yeah.
And then
how do people get the word out about their residencies?
Well, we've done ours across social media and newsletters. So, and then some listings, so artist listings, but haven't paid for them, I suppose, because
Yeah, we also go through some usual ones, being Americans, like the Alliance, being artist resident, res artist, trans artist, all those usual, plus some more focused, geographical focused or discipline focused, and then because we exist for already 50 years, so then the alumni network and also the panel networks and our former panelists more. It's we did not work, so we did not buy any like posting or things like that. My experience is that people that get selected at the end, most of the time is because they heard about it by different people. Then they decide to apply, and then they really know why they apply or why they want to come to Camargo. And it's not just like another place. Is they know what are the specificities, and then they really they can be a match there.
We offer residents a modest $1,500 stipend, which most of them end up using for travel. And do you support travel? Who here supports travel? I wish we could, but
maybe
do others?
To respond on that, so the calls that we opened are open for artists based in Europe, so that already limits, of course, the expenses on that front. But we decided not only to reimburse their ticket, but also to have, I think it's a 500 euros in total for more domestic travel. So really to encourage them to learn more about the context where the museum is in. I mean, there's also a bike, of course, available, but also if they want to go by train somewhere, we really try to make that possible.
Yeah, we have, depends on which program, but on the core program, which is basically actually the program where the condition is not the best. We give to travel, international travel, plus per diems of $250 a week. That's really, and it's really a time and space. And then for some other programs, we usually have better conditions actually, but then it's very program specific. The aim is to increase even for the core program to be able to give a monthly fee of at least $1,000 and possibly more, at least, like just to be able to say, if you want to take time and space, actually you still need to eat and you still need to leave and to be paid. So if you really, if we really want to be, and that's really proper critics of what we do, if we really want to be serious and offer proper conditions, and we need to also give a salary with that. And then is we in some programs we do have that in some partnership programs. And then it's like, it was one day really moving because one choreographer came for months, like really fully paid with a salary and she said, it's the first time I'm paid for just doing some research. And she started, like she said, yeah, it's really so rare and so to be taken serious.
Yeah, I'm currently fundraising through sort of looking to donors and everybody else to basically be able to fully fund at least 18 places a year, which would then include flights and a per diem. We've got we will have a full-time car and driver at both locations that the residents will be able to sort of book in and use to move around, because there is no public transport at all in Nigeria. So it doesn't exist. And also we are going to have to be careful how we look after our residents and be a bit careful. So that kind of comes with it, as well as a lovely housekeeper cook who will sort of shop for the residents and do the core staples and make sure that there's one cooked meal a day for everybody. So that they can do whatever they like for the rest of the time. But because there'll be a lovely shared kitchen, diner and lounge, which they can use as well as their sort of study suite, which is good. But yeah, it's then, yeah, I'm then trying to find the other sort of funding of the residents is then through the partnerships, for them to be funded through those. So I think it will be a developing model, very mixed funding model. Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear also, Belinda, about others, about what sorts of partnerships you develop or you're interested in developing, because we will develop partnerships as well, but also based on our founders, what is interesting to them, but also what would support the artist most. But I don't know, do you partner with other residencies, or do you partner with a space that has facilities for production? Or I'd be interested to hear if anyone has any interesting partnerships.
Well,
Yeah.
We tend to do a lot of partnerships, but mainly indeed with universities or presenting organization, or actually little with other residency places, just because except if it's coming from an artist project. If not, is where do we mix, and yeah, where is a sense. But so yeah, we tend to have quite a lot of partnerships, but more with presenting or producing or other foundations, actually.
Right, that's interesting.
And we are looking at, actually, we were interested in being able to develop a group of different organizations, being like, because we work on the art crossing of art, like artists and scholars and together and thinkers. So developing an informal network of organizations that work on that from different, coming from different sectors and different interests, and but just like informal 10 to 12 people to sit around a table, and then to be able to say, okay, there is this project we like, so let's see how we can work together on it, instead of having the artist to actually find his way through us, but to be able to proactively say, yeah, well, there is this project, we love that, would you be interested in just like making a group together, more informal.
So that's a really nice idea. That is something that we, because we're also, our residencies will be very multidisciplinary. At the core of it would be artists from the collection, but I think we want to, as part of our programs, also not necessarily even just from the arts, but to kind of think about these kind of connections and encounters that can emerge across disciplines or fields of practice. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of developing, very much like yourself, university partnerships. So a couple of university partnerships in the UK, but also in Nigeria, and then also some private collectors in Africa, where we can sort of make those collections available for curators to be able to access in terms of private collections, as well as then museums is the other, so, and private galleries.
Yeah, you were saying that sounds really interesting.
But it's interesting. It's working with sort of local partners on the ground, but also then on a global, making sure that there's global roots and connections in. And we're talking to a few foundations who also offer residencies to explore, is there an opportunity for reciprocal, where they've had a resident in the past who's really interested to perhaps come out to the continent, African continent, that sort of thing. Is there an opportunity for a reciprocal arrangement in some way? But again, I think it is this idea of long-term relationships, I think, is really important, not doing the one-offs. So it's saying, okay, well, let's start with something small and let's see how we can evolve and develop that into something that's much more has got a richness to it and a longevity.
Mm.
And I think, you know, Yinka is quite concerned that whatever we do should be sustainable in some way, that it can sort of survive beyond him and beyond his lifetime. And actually, yeah, so again this question about funding models, because we're in a sort of a slightly different position, that we haven't got a legacy endowment to support us. So we're having to, you know, we've got the buildings and Yinka has supplied the buildings, but we've got to sort of find the funding to actually run to run and look after everyone. And I think that's kind of that's my challenge, is actually how can I make all of that work, and how can we sort of then ensure these long-term partnerships and relationships are something that we can fund for, if you like, as well, and that they make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's we are lucky to have an endowment, but it's funds only by now, because we have been developing. I guess it funds no more than half, so we still have to look for the rest through different ways, like being based in France, but also in the US is cross funding that are possible. But that's, yeah, it's a luxury to have an endowment, that's for sure.
It's a good starting point.
It is.
It's always those core costs. You got to cover those core costs. Yeah.
Great. I just noticed the time. Thank you so much, everyone. And nor do I want to stop the conversation. Feel free if you all would like to carry on chatting. But I'm conscious of the time, and I want to make sure that we have a constructive way to continue this conversation as well. If you're all happy, I think, and again, I'm really happy to have feedback so that I can learn too. But perhaps we do create case studies for each organization that, you know, can be privately stored so that, you know, not publicly aired, but case studies from all of the participants and the other organizations that would like to get involved, and then we can share that. Would that be of use and helpful for everybody?
I wanted to hear everybody answer the question, what would you avoid doing?
Yeah, well, we don't need to end the call. Let's hit that one first.
And I was going to abstain a little because I'm just sort of new to this, running this program, but does anyone have any advice to this cohort of what not to do? Julie, you've seen it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. After years in 6 years ago, keep some freedom and some space. To be able to work and give space for artists and for yourself.
That's what you would do.
That's what I would do.
We keep trying to implement a rule for no pets, but then someone wants to bring their cat, and how can you say no? And then someone wants to bring their dog, and how can you say no? And yeah.
I think I would, similarly to Julie, would avoid trying to do too much that would get in the way of connecting with and being a good contact with the resident, because nearly every resident I spoke to, they said that what they most liked about residencies is when they felt that the team were really on board and connected with them, and that actually they didn't like it when they were just given a key and told to do your own thing, which sounds like an absolute ideal situation for me. But I think that's something that they really loved, this constant feedback. But we had experiences of just being so overwhelmed with money and admin and other programs that we were completely absent, and consequently the the residents just didn't have a good time. And yeah, so I would avoid doing that. Avoid being busy. I'm not sure how to say it, but yeah.
But that hosting element is really important. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
In our little oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in our little experience that we do have, I mean, with these with our sort of informal residencies that we have, is that's also an aspect that people, you know, maybe they come initially and it's just going to be a time to develop projects or things like that, and then everyone just ends up wanting to stay. I mean, and then obviously when we have these visiting artists, like, I mean, we have a studio space, but oftentimes they want to actually like stay in the houses with us and, you know, just and partake in the meals. And we're kind of in a remote area, so it's not like there's many places to go out to eat. Plus, my in-laws are Neapolitan, so they're in the kitchen. Everything's always excellent. And so we have all these artists who just sort of come and just kind of want to stay. And so I think what you're saying about the hosting element is definitely something and that sort of goes with the Southern Italian thing as well. And so that's something that we've felt a lot here.
And knowing when to host and when to give people space. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And then also implement the deadlines and be like, okay, so, you know, you've been here a month, like, let's try to figure out some, you know, next steps. Yeah.
Well, I want to go to everybody's residency. So
Yeah.
you have my email.
We'll have to do a tour.
Yeah.
Laurent, so what were you going to say?
Just to bounce back on Yates, what you shouldn't do, well, how it was done, how programs were run by the foundation in the past was this sort of black box model of the resident enters, the resident leaves, and what happens in the meantime was a complete unknown to the institution. But this also, so of course we're now much more involving the resident and really want their time to affect the museum, and also there will, for instance, be a presentation attached to their residency. But this creates a new problem, and that's of course, how much should you be present in their time? Because indeed, just giving the key is not the right way to go, but I can also imagine there to be too much of a presence where you lose precisely this open aspect of a residency where something unexpected can happen. So for me, this remains the main problem, like how much should be pre-formatted and how much should remain open. And so far I know that leaving it completely open is not the way to go, but I'm also not sure how much to push the other aspect.
I mean, could it just really be something that it's just sort of to be responsive to the residents? So some residents just want to just read a book or whatever. And then others, they really want the feedback and the discussion, the connections. And so it's that sort of, yeah. Bye.
Sorry, I have to leave.
Bye, Julie. Lovely.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
Hi, Julie. I actually also have to leave.
Don't worry.
But it was great meeting you all, and thank you all for sharing and letting me be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, all that.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'll be sure to make sure that everyone has email contact as well, and connecting so important. I think that's the whole ethos.
Is that a point to sort of wrap up? Is that sorry?
No, please. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And is there anything else anyone would like to add? No,
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
And it'd be
Absolute
nice to
pleasure.
stay in
And
touch.
I'll follow up in email.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye.